If you've ever lived next to a Karen, you know peace is a luxury. But what happens when the quiet neighbor she underestimates finally fights back with a twist she never saw coming? Karen moved into our quiet cul-de-sac 2 years ago. At first, she seemed normal. Middle-aged, pressed polo shirts, a Prius with a live laugh, love decal on the back windshield. But that illusion shattered fast. Within the first week of moving in, she knocked on my door at 7:15 a.m. on a Saturday to let me know my mailbox was half an inch too tall, according to city code. She even brought a tape measure to prove it. I smiled awkwardly and promised to look into it. I should have known then that was only the beginning. The following week, she reported me to the HOA because my trash bins were out more than 12 hours before pickup. Mind you, I had only rolled them out the evening before like everyone else. But Karen had photos. She must have taken them at night. Who does that? Next came the infamous gnome incident. I had a small decorative gnome in my flower bed, something my niece had painted for me as a gift. Harmless, cute even. But Karen left a note on my door in bold Sharpie letters saying, "Per HOA regulations, all front yard decorations must align with the natural aesthetic of the community. Your gnome is a visual disruption." She attached a printed copy of the HOA's landscaping clause and highlighted what she believed supported her case. I thought ignoring her would make her go away. I was wrong. Karen thrived on conflict. Fed on it like it was her morning smoothie. Soon, she started monitoring everything I did. If I trimmed my hedges on a Sunday, she'd remind me that power tools violated the noise ordinance until noon. If I parked my truck on the street instead of my driveway for more than 30 minutes, she'd come knocking, literally timing me. I tried to stay calm. I figured if I complied, she'd stop. I trimmed the hedges. I painted my fence beiged her. Approved color palette. I stopped parking on the street, even when unloading groceries. I even removed the gnome. I hated myself for it. I just wanted peace. She didn't want peace. She wanted power. She wanted to control. Everything came to a boiling point on Thanksgiving. My younger brother flew in from out of state. He parked his car in front of my house, not her house, not even blocking her driveway, just on the curb outside mine. We were inside basting a turkey and catching up when we heard the sound of a tow truck. By the time we rushed outside, his car was all ready. On the flatbed, Karen was standing at the end of her driveway with her arms folded, smug little smile stretching across her face like a cat who had just eaten someone else's canary. "I told you," she said with a shrug. "No guests parking on the street." Without HOA-approved permits, my brother was furious. I was beyond furious. But the tow guy just pointed to the HOA sign and said he was doing his job. Karen had filed a complaint earlier that day. It was a holiday. I tried reasoning with her. She just smirked and said, "Rules are rules." I didn't sleep that night, sat at my kitchen table, seething. Every complaint, every knock, every smug comment flashed through my head like a film reel. I realized I'd been playing defense this whole time. The truth, Iskrin didn't win because she was right. She won because no one ever challenged her. That's when I made a decision. I was going to fight back, but I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I wasn't going to shout or call her names or slash her tires, tempting though. No, I was going to be smarter, methodical, strategic. First, I did my research. I downloaded the entire HOA bylaw document and read it front to back twice. I made notes, highlighted contradictions, and flagged loopholes. Then I started observing her. I noticed that her backyard had a massive wooden pergola one that definitely wasn't part of the original property. According to the HOA rules, any structural modification required board approval and permits. I checked the records. Nothing. No approval, no paperwork. Next, I looked into her windows, specifically the front ones that were coated in a reflective tint. That tint violated another regulation about exterior materials needing to be non-reflective and visually consistent with surrounding homes. Hers were practically blinding in the afternoon sun. The best part? Discovered she was running a side hustle out of her garage, energy healing and crystal balancing business. She had a sign on her garage door that she took down after sessions, but I saw clients come and go every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. A quick Google search showed she had an Etsy page, a Facebook business listing, and even customer reviews. All of it unlicensed. All of it against the HOA's no home business policy. I bought a drone. I flew it discreetly one afternoon and got clear. Aerial footage of her backyard patio and multiple visitors parking on the street for her crystal appointments. I even captured her dog, a yappy little Pomeranian named Winston, running around without a leash. Another violation. With all this in hand, I spent a few days compiling everything into a tidy folder. Screenshots, videos, HOA code references, timestamps. I even printed out some of her most outrageous next-door comments where she insulted other neighbors and bragged about her influence over the board. And then, it's the piece de resistance, I quietly started talking to my neighbors. Turns out, I wasn't alone. She'd harassed at least 5 others, called the cops on a kid's birthday bounce house, yelled at an elderly woman for hanging a flag too low. One by one, they shared stories. We bonded. We got organized. The timing was perfect. The HOA's quarterly meeting was coming up, and board elections were on the agenda, so I nominated myself. Karen didn't see it coming. She thought she had the room in her pocket, but when the vote was cast, I won the set unanimously. Because behind all the forced smiles and polite nods, everyone had been waiting for anyone, to stand up to her. At the next meeting, when Karen waltzed in prepared to complain about someone's holiday lights being too cheerful, she found me sitting at the board table, wearing a name tag that read Vice President, and in my hands was a folder with her name on it. It was her turn to be on the receiving end. Karen walked into the HOA meeting like she owned the room. She always did. Chin high, clipboard in hand, lips pressed into that same thin smile that always screamed, "I'm about to ruin someone's day and enjoy it." But this time, she stopped mid-step. Her eyes locked on me, seated at the head of the table beside the HOA president. Wearing the official Navy badge of a newly elected board member, the color drained from her face so fast it was almost comical. Gave her a nod, not smug, not confrontational, just enough to say, "Oh yes, it's happening." The meeting began as usual, with the roll call and the standard list of minor neighborhood items. Karen tapped her foot impatiently, clearly waiting for her turn to launch into one of her signature monologues about the deterioration of community standards. But before she could even speak, the president turned to me and said, "You have the floor." I stood, holding up the neatly organized folder I'd spent the past few weeks assembling. "I'd like to present a list of outstanding HOA violations committed by a member of this community." The room fell silent. Even the people who had shown up just for the free cookies suddenly leaned forward in their chairs. I opened the folder and began first. I showed photos of her backyard pergola, an impressive but unapproved wooden structure that she'd clearly built without permits. I passed around the documentation proving she never submitted a request, much less received approval. Then I brought out the drone footage, clean. Undeniable evidence of the structure and the unlicensed business she was running from her garage. One neighbor audibly gasped as the video showed a line of customers parking along the street and walking in with yoga mats and tote bags. I followed that with screenshots of her Etsy shop and Instagram page, where she marketed her healing crystal services and charged anywhere from $45 to $120 per session. Her website even had a book now link. I displayed screenshots of 5-star reviews, her Facebook business listing, and a clip from one of her live streams where she said, "Don't worry, I've got the HOA wrapped around my finger." That was the nail in the coffin. Karen tried to interrupt. "This is harassment," she barked, red-faced, slamming her hand down on the table. "You're digging into my personal life." But the president calmly raised his hand to silence her. "Everything presented is publicly available or recorded in direct violation of the HOA agreement you signed. Please, let him finish."
I wasn't
Done. I went on to the reflective window tinting again against the HOA's strict regulations. I displayed photos of sunlight bouncing off her windows, nearly blinding a neighbor's child playing across the street. Then came the footage of her dog Winston running loose down the block and barking at pedestrians. No leash, no tags, all of it documented. As I wrapped up, I passed out copies of a letter I had drafted, recommending disciplinary action against her for repeated and deliberate violations. It proposed a 2-week deadline to correct all infractions or face escalating fines and potential suspension of HOA voting privileges. The board voted on it that same night. Unanimous approval. Karen sat in silence, her face a mixture of shock and fury, mouth slightly agape. She didn't say another word for the rest of the meeting. The days that followed were surreal. Suddenly, the woman who once walked the neighborhood like a sheriff with a clipboard had vanished. The smug early morning patrols stopped. No more email blasts. No more sticky notes on mailboxes or cars. Instead, contractors began appearing at her house. They removed the illegal pergola, peeled off the mirrored tint, and replaced it with standard glass. I spotted her at the town office applying for a dog license. The garage remained shut, tight, no more foot traffic. No more scent of incense wafting down the block. Neighbors started noticing. People stopped me during my evening walks to thank me. One woman even dropped off a pie. "I haven't slept this well in a year," she whispered like she was in a spy movie. She used to walk past my house and photograph my flower pots. Another guy gave me a high five and offered to mow my lawn for free. It was like the whole block had exhaled at once. But the best part wasn't just Karen's fall from grace, it was what came next. Now that I was on the board, I had the power to actually change things. I proposed a new bylaw: no anonymous or non-evidenced complaints. If someone wanted to report a violation, they had to include their name and direct proof, photo, video, or documented time and date. That alone wiped out 90% of Karen's former arsenal. The board approved it almost immediately. Then I introduced a neighborhood mediation policy. Instead of filing a complaint, residents were encouraged to first address issues with each other directly in a constructive meeting facilitated by a board member. It sounded like fluff, but it worked. Suddenly people were talking instead of tattling. The air shifted. The neighborhood felt like a community again. And then came the newsletter. Every month, the HOA sent out a small bulletin. Karen had always submitted articles, usually filled with passive-aggressive reminders, like, "Please respect curb alignment," or "Consider toning down lawn ornaments for visual consistency." But this time, I submitted a photo of my front yard restored in all its original glory. At the center stood the little garden gnome I had once removed under Karen's threat. I named him Sir Sprinkles, Keeper of Peace. The caption read, "Asterisk, sometimes a gnome is just a gnome. And sometimes it's the symbol of a neighborhood taking back its joy." The board loved it. They printed it on the front page. Karen didn't say a word. She didn't complain. She didn't email the board. A week later, "For sale" sign appeared in her front yard. I heard from a neighbor that she called the place toxic and claimed people were jealous of her spiritual gifts. I heard another rumor that she was moving to Arizona too. Start fresh. I didn't care where she went. All I knew was that she was gone. 2 months after the meeting, she was out of the house, the windows cleared, the driveway empty. We threw a block party the day after her moving truck left. Everyone came. There were balloons, music, even a bounce house for the kids. I grilled. We laughed, and for the first time in a long time, nobody was looking over their shoulder, waiting to be told their lawn chairs were 1 inch too far from the porch. I brought cupcakes. On top of each one, a tiny edible gnome. That night, as the sun set and laughter echoed down the block, I looked over at Sir Sprinkles. His painted smile somehow looked a little wider. Maybe it was the light. Or maybe, just maybe, he knew. Sometimes, the best revenge doesn't involve yelling or stooping to pettiness. Sometimes it's calm, patient, tactical. Sometimes it's showing. A Karen that rules work both ways and watching her fold when she finally has to live by them.